Good afternoon. My name's John Harris. I'm the Sales and Marketing Manager for the FDS Solutions. No need to worry, I'm not going to ask you to sign any contracts today. Monday will be fine. Okay. We as a group on the contracting side are generally dealing with a group of people that we gain feedback from as to their requirements, what they're looking for from a company such as ourselves, and developers, consultants and architects, and generally what they tell us, they've obviously all got their different requirements. Obviously architects, it'll be the aesthetics, end users typically may be the reliability of the system, but all of this feedback really comes down to a group of things that we look to satisfy with our solutions. And at the same time we're looking to the future as to where we see the industry going and how we can best tailor those opportunities. So obviously, with as one of the participants in the audience said earlier, I think probably on the buying side it's quite difficult to match the cost-saving aspect with the quality aspect, and sometimes they conflict. But clearly, somehow we have to satisfy those needs and try and provide the optimum solution to the problem, provide quality. I think the ultimate aim for us as a business is to provide quality at the right price with the expertise and backup that we think our clients need. And of course, don't forget the end user. So all of these buildings that we build or you build and we put smoke ventilation in, we're going to actually put people in to live. And what's important to them, we should be very mindful of that, of course, because ultimately that's what it's all about. The three things that immediately came to my mind were, of course, the safety of the occupants, the technical support for the system, so that we can be sure that it's going to work when it's needed, which is clearly absolutely critical, and indeed the reliability, which I suppose you could say is the same thing, but clearly a life safety system like smoke ventilation is only really used in a genuine emergency situation or when it's maintained. So just bear that in mind as we move through the presentation, because clearly that is absolutely critical. So the solution. Well, as Nick, my MD, reminded me last night, that's not it. Apparently, this is the reason I'm in sales. Apparently if that cog goes one way, the other one's going to go the wrong way, but it was way above my head, so we'll move on from that slide and look at how we see the smoke ventilation business moving forward and the best ways that we can offer solutions that meet everybody's needs. Steve obviously spoke earlier about the consultancy side, the importance of the design and what's going on in the industry at the moment and the way we see it moving forward. I think critically it's important that the expertise of the fire engineer is available through the course of a project from start to finish. We see that as absolutely critical in both delivering a good job, which often needs adaptation through the course of the project. Generally we find the bigger the project, the more likely it is that there's going to be changes required as we go through. It's not always the size of the building, but often they are quite large projects that we're finding need some re-engineering or modification through the course of installation. And it's absolutely critical to us, certainly in our business, that we do have the benefit of fire engineering behind us. That leads on to well-designed, integrated and installed fire safety systems, which I think everybody's been covering this morning. Dependable systems. So I think the whole point of the presentations today really have been touching on the fact that we have to know these systems are going to work when they're needed. And at the moment we have expressed some, not concern, but we obviously express some areas where we can see there are weaknesses, and that those are the areas that we are keen to cover and close, so that we can be sure, or sure as we ever can be, that these systems will work correctly when they're needed. So I guess from the audience, we've got a mixed audience here. So some people are going to be absolute experts on mechanical and natural smoke ventilation systems, and some are not. So just for everybody, I'll very quickly cover what we see are the benefits of the two, or the differences in the two. So there you see we've got a building with well, this one's actually got a shaft in it and the staircase is over there, but for this example we've also included AOVs over there. And obviously it's the building type that will often determine whether it's a natural or mechanical system. Okay, so natural smoke ventilation system, as you can see, there's no fan up the top. There's a shaft. Normally that shaft is going to be a lot bigger than a mechanical shaft. So those people that are involved in floor space, clearly a mechanical system is going to provide more floor space. Although it doesn't seem much, if it's a multi-storey building, it soon adds up. So that's pound notes in terms of either saleable floor space or rentable floor space, whatever you're involved in. And of course, the mechanical system does tend to be more efficient than in terms of having a fan drawing the air. So, suitability. I guess with a natural system we tend to think that they're probably easier to maintain because there's no fans and not so many moving parts. They're certainly cost effective. They are code compliant, and generally speaking, not always the case, but generally speaking we would say they're more suitable for the smaller applications. So perhaps something that's a bit lower normally, or something that's not a huge footprint. Okay, this one's actually got a fire going, and it's a natural system. So there you see the smoke detector going off. Now, just bear that in mind as we go through this presentation, because again, some of the previous speakers have spoken about whether the fire alarm system should be separate just for the smoke vent, whether it should be an integral part of the building fire alarm system as well. But clearly, unless that smoke detector goes off, nothing's going to happen. So it is absolutely critical that the smoke detector goes off in a natural or a mechanical system. This one is actually, so the AOV is opened and the smoke is going out, and that fireman, or not fireman, fireperson or firefighter has got a jetpack, which you wouldn't normally expect, because normally of course they would come up that staircase and prop open that door to get the airflow moving. to get the smoke to go out the AV. So in simple terms, I think that is the natural system explained. And we move on to the mechanical. So a similar building layout. Of course, this one's got the fan up on the top, there's the shaft, and there's the staircase. No AOVs. Of course, dampers in the shaft. So, mechanical ventilation systems, greater performance as I mentioned earlier, because obviously you've got the fans. Generally not subject to adverse wind conditions, which you may find with natural. Of course, you could have problems depending on what's going on out there with the weather. I mentioned about the saleable space, which of course comes about primarily from the smaller shafts. So once again, we've got the fire. Smoke detector's gone off, and now we've got the smoke coming up the shaft and out through the fan on the roof. Once again, we've got a firefighter with a jet pack, but of course in reality that fire person would be coming up the stairs and approaching it through that door. Okay, here we've got those of you that have not seen a mechanical smoke ventilation system in operation. This is a video, a real-time video of a test situation. So this is not a fire, this is test smoke, but it is real-time. And I hope it works. Yes, it does. I think it was supposed to be serious. And you see the air pulling the door open, of course, so that's feeding the air down the corridor. And you can hear the fans. I thought there was some sound with it. So you can see that's that's impressive, I think, and I've seen that video on numerous occasions. Mechanical smoke ventilation systems are very, very effective, you know, that video to me just, if ever we're striving to provide good solutions to safety for both the firefighters and the occupants, then I think that would provide some reassurance in my view. Just a quick example of a typical application where we may use mechanical and where it has been used, in fact. I mean, this was a project, I think 6 buildings over in Riverlight, which I think is somewhere over near Wandsworth on the Thames embankment there. Different types of buildings, but 6 quite large blocks. And we put mechanical systems in all of those blocks, and indeed the project went very smoothly. So it gives you an example of a mechanical application. Okay, so I just now jump into CFD. Again, I think some people will know CFD, and it was touched on earlier by Alan. So if I can say it correctly, it's computational fluid dynamics, is it? Yeah, hopefully. But we all say CFD. Now this is the model that we use to decide whether the system's going to work or not, basically, keeping it fairly simple. And again, it really comes back to the professional backup that we need in any business that's involved in smoke control. This particular project is Chelsea Island, which again was another big residential project. The actual CFD modelling here, so what you've got basically in simple terms, if you can't see, that's the staircase, you've got the apartment there, and then that's the corridor, and the smoke shaft is there. I believe on this example the actual corridor is 7.5 metres or less, so I think the firefighting application relates to the staircase on this one, if my information is correct. So what is all this about? Well, let's have a look, because I think it might do something. Right, what we're modelling here is a fire in the apartment, and the time is being recorded down here. And you can see there that the smoke is basically being kept out of the staircase at all times. This time clock at the bottom is typically running over 20 minutes, which is, I believe, the sort of standard time we would run for this type of model, on the basis that the fire brigade will be expected to arrive within quarter of an hour and 5 minutes to set up and get going in firefighting mode. So we need to keep that clear for them, and also we need to keep it clear for the occupants of that apartment to escape. But of course everybody else will still be in their apartments. So a very simplified version of CFD, but for those of you that wasn't sure about it, that's what it is. Clearly the modelling will vary depending on the application and the building. So again, that's why it's so important that you, if you're involved in smoke control, that you are engaging someone that is fully knowledgeable about this stuff and has the backup to deal with it. We touched on smoke control certification, so I'm really not going to cover that again, because Alan quite rightly highlighted the fact that they now audit smoke control businesses to ensure that they are approved and are professional organisations. And I know one person this morning asked, how do we choose people to price jobs? Then we know we're going to get a professional solution. Well, then clearly I would certainly advise now that you look at the list of approved businesses as certified by the SCA, and not look outside of that when gaining tenders, because at least you know then that you're dealing with people that are audited by an approved association. Okay, now this is quite a topical subject at the moment, because of course, again, Steve mentioned earlier that in Scotland and in Wales, I think it was, that there's a possibility that residential buildings could go to total evacuation at the fire brigade's choice. I think that's basically what he was saying. Well, that would make this subject even more important, because of course you really do need a fire alarm system that conforms to British Standard 5839 Part 1 to provide a full evacuation system. So if we should move in that direction, then I would imagine this would almost become compulsory, but that's all speculation. What we often see, and in fact this is probably one of our job areas, so this is a real life situation. So here you see, this is actually one of our control panels. So this is controlling the fire detection for the smoke control system. And over here we have something that looks virtually the same, but it's actually a panel that's not provided by us, that is controlling the fire alarms in the building. So we've got a mixture of two things that we've now got to connect together, when we really don't need to do that, because this will do it. And then when you think this through, that means that those of you that are in the M&E world will know that means we're all running or somebody, whether it's your smoke control system company or your fire alarm company, are going to be running cables around the same route but duplicating, because you might as well, why not put the detectors for the main fire alarm and the call points and the sounders on the loop that you're feeding through on the detectors for your control of your smoke ventilation system. In those terms, it sort of doesn't really make a lot of sense when you think that through. The other problem is, of course, when it comes to commissioning the systems, you've got to get the fire alarm provider that's got to have the inputs, you've got the smoke control company that's got to be there to interface with the two, and we really do experience quite a lot of problems from our contracts in getting good coordination between those two parties, and it's always at the critical time, of course, when building control are there to witness handover. You need the system to work, you wait for a fire alarm signal, and a number of times that creates problems, and we're either going back, trying to sort it out, and then we get in the situation of, well, your system doesn't work. Well, actually it's not ours, it's that one, and actually that's not ours. So, and you get into all of that debate, and then once the end user takes the system, I mean, how do you do the maintenance now then? So the fire alarm company normally here has got very limited knowledge, if any, on smoke ventilation, and they come in and test the fire alarm, wouldn't even know they've triggered probably in many cases the smoke ventilation, and then your smoke ventilation company's got to come back and then at some point and do maintenance, and then you get problems between that and that. So it's all a bit of a strange way of doing things in our opinion at the moment. So that's why we are thinking this is not the way forward. So, approved fire detection alarm system. I mean, it's a critical system, so typically that one panel there that you just saw would be manufactured to EN54. It's BS 5839 compliant, so it meets all of the standards of a fire alarm system. And of course, installation one system conforming to all the British standards, and indeed the ease of installation that we spoke about. The conclusion, at the start, as you remember, we surveyed and asked the interested parties that we deal with what's important to them, and it's very much revolves around an inclusive design approach with expert fire consultants who live with the project from conception to completion, and we see that as a big thing. I mean, people talk about golden thread and all the other things that have been coming out of the Grenfell situation, but that very much ties in with all of that. Of course, I've spoken about the approved smoke ventilation company, and ultimately we think that the provision of an integrated and approved fire detection system conforming to the requirements of British Standard 5839 is going to be critical as well, and that will provide the best solution for all of the stakeholders involved. So thank you for listening. Are there any questions on my presentation? Yeah, I mean, in most cases, really, I think Steve will stop me if I've got this wrong, but in my opinion, really, it's really about the cost and the whether it's worth putting a mechanical system into more of a low-rise application. Obviously, if you've got something that's 4 to 6 stories, say, and not a massive footprint, you're probably the larger shaft's not going to make that much difference to you, and it should provide adequate smoke ventilation, but it's not going to be as good as mechanical.